All right, welcome everyone to the DAI live session. My name is Radu. I'm a senior dev partner manager at Definity, and today we have quite some exciting guests. We have the DecideAI team. So we have Rahil, who is the founder and CEO, and we also have Jeshli, who is the lead machine learning engineer. So I'll let you introduce yourselves first, and then we can kickstart the discussions.
Sure, I'll go. Thanks, Radu. So I'm Rahil. I'm the founder of DecideAI. A bit about my background. I was an engineer grad from Waterloo. Worked at Microsoft. Worked at various startups, A16Z backed startups, etc. Been in the crypto space since about 2017, and had actually started Mod Club, which was the first iteration or first project on the IC that we did a couple of years ago, and now pivoted into this space of AI through DecideAI, which we'll be talking a little bit more about today. Jeshli, why don't you? Yeah.
So I have a PhD in ML, and got into crypto from buying GPUs to run machine learning back in 2017. And someone was like, "Run, try to mine Ethereum," and then more recently, just been really excited about publishing AI on chain on the internet computer, and there's so much to do there, and I'm having a blast doing it.
Awesome, thank you so much. So Rahil, you mentioned that Decide AI is actually a pivot from an older project that I think most of the community already knows, Mod Club. So tell us a bit about the transition and kind of what was the scope of Mod Club back in the day, and why you, pun intended, decided to to pivot to Decide AI.
Yeah. So I think, well, yeah, you're right. Most people probably know about us through Mod Club. So Mod Club was a decentralized content moderation platform that allowed anyone basically within the ecosystem can sign up, create an account, and then through tokenized incentives would moderate content. So Nuance was one of our partners, and they would post blog content, and every article that would be posted on Nuance would also get posted on Mod Club, and with their set of custom rules, moderators would review that and then either approve or reject it. And we use the Schelling point mechanism in order to decide on the majority of voters of who actually make the final decision, and they get incentivized, whereas the minority kind of gets penalized. We did a few integrations with other companies. We did a bunch of, we did an NFT partnership, especially with BTC Flower, which was a fairly big one for us. And we also had our proof of humanity solution as well as part of Mod Club. So in order to get moderators who are actual real humans on board, we needed a proof of humanity solution. So we built that out. So we got about 9,000 moderators who joined the platform, signed up around 30 different countries. And it was a great platform, and it was very exciting to work on it. We decided that later last year that with AI and LLMs becoming so much more exciting and being more used within the space, and speaking with Joshly, we saw that there was actually an opportunity to leverage the core base technology that we built with Mod Club to pivot into this AI space, especially around the fine tuning and training piece, because moderation is similar almost to data labeling or training, because you're reading content, you're evaluating it based on some rules, and then you're assigning some kind of label or attached result to that. And so we decided that this probably would fit very well to take what we already built out and then just reapply it to this space that's growing and is actually very exciting. So we made a proposal to the community about, we attached our kind of strategy of what we were envisioning for DecideAI. And, that proposal got passed through our SNS. And so, yeah, we began this transition earlier this year to DecideAI. And so you can go to DecideAI.xyz to kind of see our overall vision and our different products, et cetera. Yeah, and kind of we're excited to keep on this journey and go forward.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. I very much like the comparison between training models and moderation. So maybe Jeshli, can you tell us a bit about like what is exciting about decentralized AI and why a platform or an already decentralized platform like Mod Club um, and others potentially should be interested in this trend, and what is so special about it? Because we've been hearing about AI for the past, I don't know, 7 years at least, if not more. So why what is it so special about decentralized AI?
So many of the important aspects people already have been talking about for a long time, about like data ownership and algorithm control, and like Jack Dorsey was just being promoted about talking about like how we can control our data and what algorithms feed us our data. We all are aware that the tech monopolies that control AI, their power increases, and decentralization is the only way to counteract that and enable people to have more control over what kind of content they're using or what kind of decisions are being made on their behalf. The mod club component is interesting to me because there's multiple aspects of how blockchain can connect to AI that's important. So we talk about AI on chain as a really exciting, fun thing, but there's also cryptographic money transfer abilities in blockchain, right? So like seamless cross-border payment systems, and the proof of identity to enable us to get data to train models off-chain. So we could use on-chain mechanisms to collect data and evaluate the quality of the data, and then like given the state of AI right now with like cutting edge, push as much compute as possible, you wouldn't want to replicate most of these operations. That we have this whole world of collecting, quality controlling, improving models using blockchain, but not necessarily training. But then we can also do for critically important things, potentially work up to learning models on chain or in verifiable ways, so that you can control like what data goes into it. Right, these are like classic things for large language models, like copyright. Or just like the wokeism is one of the things people often critique about what's being put into the prompts. Really, we could go on and on just about that.
Yeah, I think it's thank you very much. I think it's very interesting, and you touched upon a couple of things that we'll probably get into in a minute, mostly around verifiable data and verifiable AI models. But maybe before that, it's also worth kind of like distilling a bit what DecideAI that does nowadays. So what are your core products? What are your core value propositions right now? And kind of how do you see the protocol evolving also in the future?
Sure. So the way we envision Decide AI is it's an AI, decentralized AI ecosystem, right? And we're focusing on boosting current open source LLMs by combining, the security of blockchain with incentivized RLHF for, exceptional accuracy and then cost optimizations. And so the way we are going to achieve this is via three main products. Our proof of humanity or proof of personhood product is called Decide ID. And this will vet that the people who join Decide DecideAI to do this labeling are real people, but not only that, there will be some credential verification. So in order to do, very good data labeling, you need to have, people who have some kind of skill set or educated in some manner, tailored for the specific use case you want. And so we will leverage zero knowledge proofs along with verifying someone's, say, university degree, some type of certificate they've done, or even have some kind of standardized test baked in within DecideID that will validate that they can do this type of work for DecideAI. The second product, it will be Decide Protocol. So what you see as Mod Club today is kind of what is Decide Protocol. It's you could also call it Decide Training, and it is actually the core piece where we have some kind of instruction set from a customer or even from ourselves to take some open source model off the shelf, like let's say it's Llama 3, and with some instruction set, collect and some seed prompts, collect information and preferences from labelers within the platform. And so, if there's whatever the instruction set is, it might be like, we want this model to be more secure or more safe for customer service or medical. The labelers would evaluate the prompt results, give it some kind of preference score, and then feed that into our training and reinforcement learning model. And then that would get iterated and improved over time. So we keep on evaluating the result of that model. And then in the end, hopefully we have a model that is performing as to spec of what the customer wants, and performing better than what you would get out of just having the open source model used off the shelf. And then our final product, what we envision is called Decide Cortex, and it's going to be like a marketplace where we will host our own models and our own data sets that we created and allow you to access via an API or direct canister integration to use within your services. And there'll be some kind of like charging or fee or licensing fee process there for you to access those models. And some of them will just be completely open source and free to use. We are, still evaluating what exactly, what parts of the business model will apply for, payment or what will be free. But essentially, it'll just be a marketplace, kind of like Hugging Face you see today, but fully on chain and decentralized. And so those three components, currently is what will comprise DecideAI, but I don't think it will stop there as this kind of technology is continuously advancing. And so we'll probably start to add more products outside of that onto DecideAI.
Thank you very much for the answer. I very much like the description of like how data labelers will be able to kind of like annotate the answers, because I can see some real applications where, for example, in education, in a few years you will get kids of a certain age to be trained to use AI companions, right, or AI sidekicks in their school progress, because I think that's where the whole world will be going. And you don't want certain answers to, or not necessarily answers, but certain language, so for the kids to be exposed to certain language. And I think one of the demos that I've seen for you is quite interesting, and it's quite in that direction, right?
Yeah, you're talking about Redactor.
Yes, about Redactor AI.
But before we jump into Redactor, which is, I think, it's a really cool product, and I think Jeshi will talk a little bit more about that. But I think you brought a good point up about like, how this technology and how this RLHF process will work, especially in schooling. If a student is using a model off the shelf versus something that had been fine tuned for education, an example of like the difference between an off the shelf versus a fine tuned model using RLHF is like, you could ask the LLM, what is a language, right? And in the off the shelf, it might just return back Spanish or Java. Sorry, it will say Java, right? Like the programming language. Whereas in the fine-tuned model, if it's, if it's fine-tuned for a specific class, it might return Spanish or Japanese, or
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
more relatable to the actual use case that you're actually trying to solve for, right? And so that's where
yeah.
the RLHF process comes in, right? And you can apply it to different subjects and different
Yeah.
use cases,
Yeah,
right?
of course, healthcare and any other like niche and vertical where I think that it's very interesting because as a, let's say, as an open AI user, sometimes y- you don't see the need for this fine tuning. But I think like after watching what has happened in the past months with some AI models going rogue, and you also mentioned wokeism um, in the models. I think that yeah, it's I think it's definitely an interesting conversation to have, and it shouldn't be under a centralized control. It should be fine tunable, and it should be that everyone decides what model they're using, or what model fits best for their use case. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
There's something
but
I
yeah,
would
maybe
want to add in
yeah,
there.
sure.
It's just that we often talk about RLHF or the other post optimization techniques in sense of like controlling the output or like mitigating like harmful language or something like that. Um, but it's also just to make the model better at everything you want it to do. And so when Meta published the Llama 3 report, um, they trained on the largest corpus trained yet. It's like the opposite of what Microsoft Phi was doing. Um, and what they found was all the answers that they wanted to all the questions, like when you're prompting a large language model, were there, but they were really hard to get to. So if
Hmm.
you phrased it slightly differently, it would just give you like a Reddit, like useless response kind of thing. But if you phrased it perfectly, it would give you the ideal response. So the idea was, okay, let's train it so that it gives us these like high quality, informative, helpful responses just all the time.
Yeah,
And it needed that.
what was it? It was a couple of days ago that I don't remember which model was suggesting adding glue onto pizza to make the cheese stick to the pizza. That was based on an 8-year-old comment on Reddit. So trading the data with which the model is trained is relevant if you don't want glue on your pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, but yeah, let's let's come back to more serious stuff. So we discussed a bit about Redactor AI, which was a very interesting demo that I've seen for you. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, and kind of what is the reasoning behind it, and how does it work, and can also do a quick demo here if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jesse, I think
you
you
got
should
it.
go for it.
Okay.
Hmm.
So the reasoning, this is why I wasn't sure who'd be best to answer it. So the reasoning was to explore how to minimize hateful speech uh, for people that are, say, you have a moderator and you don't necessarily want to just flood them with a hateful speech review. If it's easy enough to to censor, but the application is just you could turn up the dials to be as sensitive or insensitive as you would want, and it was more exploratory in terms of how we would run AI on the internet computer, what we could do at that point. So we're looking at like February, um, and so we can give a demonstration, but the reality is it's going to be consistently upgraded. And one of the things that I'm so excited about is the advances that the Definity team is making. Um,
Yeah, and so this is cool because it also has it's a multi-canister kind of architecture here, where you have one canister which is the tokenizer, and the other canister actually performs the inference. So it once you put the text in, it goes to the tokenizer, and then does the inference afterwards, which is cool.
So
yeah,
maybe for our less technical audience, you can also tell us what does inference actually refer to?
So inference is just the prediction. So when you give an input, like for instance, we're inputting words, the inference is the number it's returning for how abusive this text is, or like anything that you would predict.
So that would be the total score that you see there.
Yeah,
the results.
man. But we actually, if you like inspect the code on the in the console, you'll see that actually every token returned has a independent value. So that way you can blur subsets of phrases. So this is the total abusiveness, and it wouldn't be considered abusive on the data set it was trained until it reaches a 1. But the idea here would be that we actually have like long phrases or paragraphs where most of it's not abusive, and then there's just a subset that's abusive. So the idea is you're actually targeting the words that are abusive. So each actual token, what usually I say as a word to when we're like worried about people understanding what we're talking about, each word is given its own score. But when I say token and like this, there's a tokenization canister right here. Large language models actually break things into like more like syllables often. Sometimes they're full words, but often like I try like hypoglycemic when I'm like testing tokenization, different techniques, because these are like like prefixes and suffixes that change the meaning of the word, and they they're broken out separately.
So maybe tell us exactly what components are on chain, and maybe just walk us through like what is happening from the moment I enter a text to the moment that I receive this total score or this blur, and yeah, in very broad terms so that our audience can understand.
Yeah, so it's entirely on chain. The tokenization is happening on chain, and the inference is happening on chain. So you input the
and
text,
the front end also is hosted on chain,
and the front end is also hosted on chain. Thank you. So it's entirely on chain. So the text you input in your browser is then fed to the tokenization canister, which returns the tokenization IDs, right? So those are integers that when you actually feed it into the model, you don't feed words, so you feed numbers. So you feed the text to the tokenization canister, which returns integers, and those integers are then fed into the inference canister, which then returns the abusiveness per token. And then you can recreate this on the front end with scores and tokens all put together as text.
That's super interesting, and maybe like building up on this example, because I think it's very interesting because our audience can very much visualize what exactly means to have like an open AI model. But you were also mentioning in the beginning a bit about verifiable compute. So let's also taking this example, right? So what is abusive to a certain scenario, for example, for adults, or sorry, what is not abusive for in an adult scenario may be considered abusive for children, and maybe I want to make sure that the model that my kids in school are using has been trained with the right data set, and I'm able to somehow verify that they're using the right model. So maybe can you comment on like this verifiable data sources aspect of it, and how that would look like?
So in order to verify what data you were training the algorithm on, you would require zero knowledge proofs to validate that the model that you're going to train was trained on said data. So the most of the focus is going to be on the data that goes on afterwards. So the annotation, which is used to fine tune the model, and those processes, which ultimately dictate how the large language model performs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Raheel could talk more about his vision for how this process will pan out.
Yeah, so I think one will be we'll be leveraging zero knowledge proofs not just for validating kind of the training data, but also on the user expertise side. So when we look at Redactor here, this is, I would say, more of an experimental product to test kind of the limits of the IC and what we can actually achieve on chain. As more and more compute it gets available on chain via GPUs, subnets with GPU access. That verifiable compute doesn't really need zero knowledge proofs anymore, and we can do it all on chain, which would be great.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the gold standard and the ultimate vision, I think, for the IC as well. But if we wanted to verify the data that we've used to train this, and for everyone to kind of also validate it, we would need to utilize ZKP. Specifically for this data set, now you see how like hey everyone have a good day, the have is kind of blurred out. This data set is a pretty small data set from UC Berkeley's abusive language data set. So it is not the best. And, we don't recommend using it probably in a production scenario. But, if you did want to just like play around with it, and I think I remember the founder of OpenFPL, which is another IC project, said maybe I'll use this for, just detecting abusive like usernames within his product, right? And so that could be a good use case for trying to use this if you wanted to. But yeah, we definitely don't recommend saying using this production ready for evaluating all the comments within your product or your game or whatever. But it is like a good way to just detect a signal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And what we plan to do with like models like Redactor or like the tokenization canister you see here, like the tokenization canister yourself could be used for another product for them to feed into their inference canister, right? So we plan to kind of like add these pieces to our marketplace through Decide Cortex. So you'll see Redactor as one of the options. And then we'll release this model there. So you could even use it in your own canister, right? And so the experimental phase is something we'll continuously do within DecideAI to expand kind of our reach on the IC and within this ecosystem.
Cool. So we have quite a few questions related to when are you going to launch this? I think people are getting excited about it. So,
yeah, sure. So with every startup, with every product you want to launch as soon as possible, what we're doing, because we have 3 products, we're going to release, I think, the most important piece first, which is DecideID. So we took the proof of humanity product we had in Mod Club, we've separated it out, and it's going to become DecideID, and we're very close to launching that probably within the next few weeks. So if you stay tuned, you sign up to our wait list, which I think is kind of down right now on the website. I saw someone mention that. But if you sign up for the wait list, you'll receive an email soon to sign up for DecideID. You can verify your proof of humanity there. And we'll start to actually introduce kind of like reward points and other incentives within that, so you can attach it to your DecideID. So that will be released first. And then I think by the end of the next quarter, we'll have Decide protocol out for people to also do the training on. And then Decide Cortex will be later this year, probably Q4, maybe early next year. And that will be where kind of like the models are being like hosted and being accessed. But for timelines, generally, that's what we're looking at. And yeah, like we also might do some experimental things that come along the way that are going to be on chain AI that don't fit within our current product lineup, but might be something like a Redactor or something else cool, maybe something in vision.
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually. So last time when we had a DAI live session, we also had Ulan, and it was exactly the day when the ICP roadmap, the new ICP roadmap, was launched. So I guess the question is what is exciting for both of you in terms of what is on the ICP roadmap for AI, and what is like what are one or two things that you can't wait to get your hands on from what is being developed on a protocol level for DAI.
I'll let Joshua talk about this because he's in the DEI group, so he's like he knows everything that's coming out. He's talking to Elon. He knows.
I mean, so there's a bunch of really exciting things, and what we need to do as AI developers is get our compiled WASM AI code to Ulan so he can test them on like his own setup where he investigates every single performance aspect of running things. Because it's been like widely touted that he reduced the machine learning inference times by like 3.5x for compute. So that's going to be a huge boon to running AI models on chain. And then in the beta release for DFX right now, they have SIMD support, same instruction, multiple data, and SIMD enables you to take a quantized model. Quantized is like you round off the data decimal accuracy of the weights of the numbers, the coefficients used in your model. And SIMD enables them to be calculated in parallel as a single operation. So again, drastically improve. And so that's what I'm working on right now. It's integrating SIMD into Canister code. And it's like right now, the excitement's right now. Like I'm sure they're going to do more.
Awesome. Yeah. So we also have another question from the audience. How are you going to decentralize the reporting and reviewing of flagged text?
The reporting and reviewing of flagged text. Centralized reporting and reviewing of flagged text. I'm not exactly sure. I guess like it depends on what context the text is being flagged in, I guess, in which application and the use case it is.
Mhm.
You know, if someone had integrated with Redactor specifically, you know, it does do the evaluation of the text of abusive language and then gives you an answer. And there's no evaluation after that fact. And so, you know, the app developer who'd integrated with it gets to decide like what threshold level of abusiveness I'm accepting from Redactor, and then making a decision on their own to either like flag it or hide it or kick the user out of their open chat channel or what have you. So I think it's more on the application developers side to actually make that decision.
Yep. Thanks. Makes sense. So I think we're kind of reaching the end of our conversation. I'd like to just give you the stage for some final thoughts on like how do you see the future of decentralized AI? How do you see this entire context with everything that is happening with open AI in the last weeks or month already, and how do you see the entire industry moving forward? And yeah, what are you excited about for the next 6 months or for next year?
Yeah, for me, I believe that, you know, you can already see decentralization of AI and LLMs just kind of occurring within the space. And I wouldn't say that means it's on blockchain, but I mean like there's just so many more options, and there's so many more open source products out there that people can choose from, and not just, you know, utilize OpenAI. But we still don't know what is going into those LLMs. You know, Facebook is creating Llama 3, but like, you know, how is it trained? How is it fine tuned afterwards? Like what are they dictating is is their safety protocol for LLMs. I think that bringing these things on chain, making them more transparent, and allowing the community to kind of decide on what the end result should be, is what what we are trying to achieve and focus on with DecideAI. And I think that as the technology on the IC gets better, that we're going to be able to achieve and scale out these amazing models that are going to be competitive with what you see in the open source space and even in the private space, that have more trust. They're more transparent, and they offer great value to users. So really excited about this space, and I think we're just starting. So it's cool, very cool. Jeshley?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I'm really excited about. If we're talking about Decide protocol, it's like how we're going to be able to improve large language models for what we need. And so there's like a bunch of fun examples, like floating around Twitter is this guy who said, like, why do you need to hire a Solidity dev? You just use Chat GPT. And then like his it's been drained, he was hacked. And it's like, there some machine learning people I respect have reported that like 95% of attempts using GPT or other state-of-the-art LLMs for coding, you produce like 95% of the time, these state-of-the-art models produce vulnerabilities in Solidity code. So it's like you can't use it for what we need in this industry, right? Secure code. And so that's just one of the use cases that Decide protocol, if you leverage like proper Solidity devs that are verified, that you could refine your large language models to produce better quality Solidity code, reducing like audit times and improving best practices and stuff like that. And then there's all the stuff, Dom often spouts some like pretty fun ideas that like people talk about the UX in crypto, like large language models. People always wanted to improve the UX. And like sometimes it's amazing what they do, but also sometimes they just like don't do well. And like when money's involved, you don't really want to play that risk. But I'm excited to make large language models better for like all the use cases that we have evidence that they can do well if we can just fine tune them and go through this process. So that's where I'm at.
But that's actually a super interesting point. And once you're talking about, okay, I really like this example with the devs and with vulnerabilities and ejecting, but potentially you can have malicious actors training models, right? As long as you don't have traceability of how a model is trained. Like, for example, I can train a model and I can maliciously inject vulnerability so that when somebody asks, it's like, okay, write an ERC20 contract, then that will by default have the vulnerability in it. So that's something interesting that can happen. I guess it brings it back the point to verifiable data sources, right? To a certain extent.
Absolutely.
All right. That I think is all for today for the DAI live space. I'll let you for one final time to end the discussion with a call to action for our audience. Get them excited about the protocol. And with this, thank you very much for your attention. And love to hear one final word from you. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Radu, for setting up this space. Thanks to Definity as well for promoting this. And we're really excited to see, what's to come from a technology standpoint, marketing standpoint about DAI. We're really excited about the space, and we're participating in, as many channels as we can. If you're interested in what we're doing, come to DecideAI.xyz, sign up to either Decide ID or Decide Protocols waitlist. When those are ready, you'll get an email, and then you can sign up, and there might be, maybe some airdrops or other incentives, for becoming an early adopter. So, stay tuned, and then follow us on Twitter, which is, I think, Decide AI, and then there's like an underscore. And then you can link our Discord and other socials or and open chats and everything are going to be linked there as well. So yeah, stay tuned for what we have in store, and we're really excited for what's to come.
Thank you very much, Rahil. Thank you very much, Jeslie. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you very much, everyone that tuned in. See you again soon for a new DAI live session. Bye bye.
Bye.
Right.